The alarm woke Jake Morrison from a deep sleep. He rolled out of his bunk and grabbed his uniform, moving through the familiar motions he had done 1,000 times before. As captain of the Horizon's Edge, he was used to unexpected situations. But this morning felt different somehow. "Captain to the bridge," the speaker crackled. It was Ben Hayes, his first officer. The man's voice carried an edge of excitement that was unusual for the normally calm commander. Jake made his way through the narrow corridors of the ship. The Horizon's Edge was an exploration vessel, built tough like everything humans made for space travel. It had to be. Earth was a dangerous planet, and humans had learned to build things that could survive anything. When he stepped onto the bridge, his crew turned to look at him. Amy Rodriguez sat at the engineering station, her fingers dancing across the controls. Lisa Chun stood near the main display, her eyes wide with wonder. "What have we got?" Jake asked. Ben brought up the display. "A message, sir. Quantum transmission from an unknown source. It came through about 20 minutes ago." "Play it," Jake said. The speakers hummed, and then a voice filled the bridge. It spoke in a language Jake didn't recognize at first, but the ship's computer started translating immediately. The voice spoke in several different languages, all of them ancient Earth tongues that hadn't been used in thousands of years. "The debt falls due. The children of Terra must answer." Then came coordinates. A location deep in the galactic core, farther than any human ship had ever traveled. "That's it?" Jake asked. "There's more," Lisa said. She touched the display and data streamed across the screen. "This transmission contains massive amounts of information. Archaeological data, genetic sequences, historical records. Captain, I think this is about first contact." "We've had contact with other species before," Ben said. "Not that kind of contact," Lisa replied. Her hands shook slightly as she pulled up images on the screen. "This is about the first contact. With us, with humanity? 50,000 years ago." The bridge fell silent. Every human knew the mystery of their own history. How humans had suddenly developed language, tools, and fire in what seemed like an instant on the evolutionary timeline. Scientists had debated it for centuries. "What does it say?" Jake asked quietly. Lisa took a breath. "It says that someone came to Earth during an ice age. They found our ancestors dying, freezing on the edge of extinction. And they saved us. They gave us fire to warm ourselves. They gave us language to communicate. They gave us the knowledge to make tools. They uplifted us." "Who?" Amy asked from her station. "They call themselves the progenitors," Lisa said. "And according to this message, they didn't just help humanity. They've helped dozens of species across the galaxy. They're the reason intelligent life exists at all in this part of space." Jake stared at the coordinates on the screen. "And now they're calling in the debt." "It looks that way," Ben said. "The message says they need our help, that we're the only ones who can answer." "Why us?" Amy asked. "Why not the Velkari or the Zun or the Kreeth? They've been in space a lot longer than we have." Lisa's face went pale. "I think I know why." "Captain, look at this." She brought up a star chart showing the 3 major galactic powers. The Velkari Dominion controlled huge sections of the trade routes. The Zoan hegemony administered entire sectors with their telepathic networks. The Kreeth Empire held military dominance over countless worlds. According to this data, the progenitors uplifted all of them too, thousands of years ago. But none of them answered the call. "They forgot," Jake said softly. "Or they chose not to remember," Ben added. Jake made his decision quickly. It was the kind of choice that defined who humans were. Someone had saved their species from extinction, had given them everything that made them who they are. How could they not answer? "Set course for those coordinates," he said. "Maximum speed?" "Sir," Ben said carefully, "that will take us through territory claimed by all 3 empires. They won't like us traveling through their space without permission. And they definitely won't like us going to the core. That area is forbidden by galactic law." "Whose law?" Jake asked. "The empires made that law to keep everyone else out. If the progenitors need help, I don't care what the Empires think. Amy grinned from her station. Now that's what I like to hear. I'll get the engines ready. Over the next few hours, word spread through the ship. Jake called a meeting and explained the situation to the entire crew. He gave them a choice. This wasn't a military mission ordered by Earth government. This was his decision as captain. Anyone who wanted to stay behind could transfer to another vessel. Not a single person left. "We're with you, Captain," said one of the junior officers. "If someone saved our species, we owe them everything. It was the human way. Honor mattered. Debts had to be repaid. It was one of the things that made humans different from the other species they had met. The Valkyrie only cared about profit. The Zoan only cared about order. The Kreeth only cared about power. But humans cared about keeping their word." 2 days later, they were joined by 2 more ships. The Defiant and the New Dawn had heard about the mission and volunteered to come along. Admiral Kate Sullivan, the highest-ranking military officer in the sector, sent a message. "I can't officially approve this mission," she said over the video link. "But unofficially, I'm coming with you." Earth Command is scrambling to figure out what to do, but by the time they make a decision, we'll already be halfway there. Jake smiled. "Welcome aboard, Admiral." The 3 ships formed a small fleet and jumped to faster-than-light speed. They traveled for weeks, moving through empty space at first. But eventually they entered the outer regions of Valkyrie territory. That's when the warning started. "Human vessels. You are entering Valkyrie-controlled space without authorization," came the transmission. "State your purpose or turn back." Jake kept their course steady. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Human Exploration Fleet. We are traveling to the Galactic Core on a matter of ancient law. We mean no harm to Valkyrie territory and request peaceful passage." "Denied," the Valkyrie responded. "The core region is forbidden. Turn back now." "Can't do that," Jake said. "We have a debt to pay. Then you will be stopped by force." Ben looked at the tactical display. 6 Valkyrie destroyers moving to intercept. They're powering weapons. Jake had hoped to avoid a fight, but he wasn't surprised. The Empires had grown used to pushing everyone around. They weren't used to being told no. "All ships raise shields," he ordered. "Weapons to stand by." "I don't want to fire unless they do first." The Valkyrie ships closed in, surrounding the human fleet. They were larger than the human vessels, more heavily armed. On paper, this should have been an easy fight for them, but the Valkyrie had never fought humans before. The first volley of Valkyrie weapons hit the horizon's edge dead center. Energy beams that could punch through most ship hulls splashed harmlessly against the human shields. The Valkyrie fired again, and each time the human ships absorbed the damage without any trouble. "Their weapons aren't getting through," Amy reported. "Our shields are holding at 90%. Jake understood why. Human ships were built to survive Earth's radiation belts, solar flares, and the crushing gravity of their home world. They were overbuilt by galactic standards because Earth was a death trap compared to most planets. What other species considered heavy weapons were barely scratching human defenses. "Return fire," Jake ordered. "Aim for their engines. I want them disabled, not destroyed." Human weapons had been designed to break through asteroid fields and punch through radiation storms. When they hit the Valkyrie ships, the results were devastating. 3 of the destroyers lost power immediately, drifting helplessly in space. The other 3 tried to flee. "Let them go," Jake said. "We made our point." But the warning had been sent. Across the galaxy, the 3 empires received the same message from their Valkyrie outpost. The humans were not easy prey. The humans were dangerous. The humans were Deathworlders. That word spread like fire through the galactic networks. Deathworlder. It was a term used to describe species that evolved on the most dangerous planets. Worlds with high gravity, lethal radiation, extreme weather, and aggressive predators. Less than 1% of inhabited worlds qualified as death worlds. Earth was rated as a Class 12 death world, one of the most dangerous planets, known to support life, and humans had evolved to thrive there. Lisa was studying the data. In her lab when she made another discovery. Captain, you need to see this. Jake found her surrounded by displays showing genetic information and historical records. What is it? I've been analyzing the progenitor data, she said. They didn't just uplift humanity. They uplifted all the major species. The Valkyrie, Zun, Kreeth, and dozens of others. But there's a pattern. Every species they helped came from relatively safe planets. Mild climates, low radiation, stable geology. Except us, Jake said. Except us, Lisa agreed. Earth was by far the most dangerous planet they ever worked with. I think they chose to help us because they knew we would be different, stronger, more adaptable, more willing to take risks. Or maybe they just felt sorry for us, Jake said with a slight smile. Struggling to survive on that nightmare world? Maybe, Lisa said. But I think they saw potential. And now we're the only ones who answered their call. The journey to the galactic core took them deeper into dangerous territory with each passing day. Jake stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, watching the stars stream by as they traveled through Zun space. Admiral Kate Sullivan had joined them aboard the Defiant, and Commander Rick Stone commanded the New Dawn. 3 human ships against an entire galaxy that didn't want them to reach their destination. We're getting multiple signals, Ben reported from his station. The Zun are demanding we stop and submit to inspection. They say we're violating their territorial sovereignty. Tell them we're exercising our right to travel through open space, Jake replied. We're not stopping. Lisa looked up from her research station. Captain, the Zun are different from the Valkyrie. They're telepaths. They might try to read our minds or control us. Can they do that? Amy asked, her hands pausing over the engineering controls. I don't know, Lisa admitted. They've never tried it on humans before. We've had limited contact with them, always through official channels with telepathic blockers in place. Before Jake could respond, the lights on the bridge flickered. A strange pressure built in his head, like someone was pushing against his thoughts. Around him, the crew stiffened as they felt it too. They're in our heads, Ben said through gritted teeth. But something unexpected happened. The pressure grew stronger, but it didn't break through. Jake felt his mind pushing back instinctively, like a muscle flexing against resistance. Around him, his crew was doing the same. The human brain, shaped by millions of years of surviving on a death world, proved to be far more resilient than the Zoan expected. I can feel them trying, Amy said, but it's like they're hitting a wall. They can't get in. The telepathic attack lasted for several more minutes before it suddenly stopped. A new transmission came through, this time in spoken language instead of telepathic communication. How is this possible? The Zoan commander's voice carried genuine shock. Your minds are like fortresses. We cannot touch you, Jake smiled grimly. Where we come from, you have to be tough just to survive. That includes our minds. 3 Zun. Patrol ships moved to intercept them, but Jake ordered the fleet to maintain course. The Zun fired warning shots, their weapons flashing across the void. When the humans didn't stop, they fired for real, like the Valkyrie before them. The Zun discovered that human shields were far stronger than expected. Their weapons, designed to fight other species that evolved on gentle worlds, barely scratched the defenses of ships built to survive Earth's brutal environment. Return fire, Kate ordered from the Defiant. Disable their propulsion. The 3 human ships opened fire together. The Zun vessels didn't stand a chance. Within minutes, all 3 were drifting helplessly, their engines destroyed but their crews unharmed. Let's move, Jake said, before they send reinforcements. As they left Zen space behind, Dan Foster joined Jake in his ready room. The Marine lieutenant had served in the Colonial Defense Force for 10 years and had the scars to prove it. He was a short man with hard eyes and steady hands. Captain, we need to talk about what happens when we reach the core, Don said. Go ahead. We're heading into the unknown, Don said. 3 empires are going to try to stop us. We need to be ready for ground combat, boarding actions, the whole deal. My Marines are ready, but I need to know you understand what we're getting into. I know, Jake said quietly. We might not all make it back. That's not what worries me, Don replied. What worries me is that we're about to show the whole galaxy what humans can do in a fight. Once they see that, everything changes. We can't go back to being the quiet newcomers anymore. Jake looked out the viewport at the stars. Maybe it's time they learned. The empires have been pushing everyone around for too long. If us standing up to them makes things change, then maybe that's not such a bad thing? Dan nodded slowly. Just wanted to make sure you'd thought it through, sir. Over the following weeks, strange things started happening. Ships appeared on their sensors, but these weren't Empire vessels. They were smaller craft, civilian transports, and old colony ships. They tried to stay hidden, but Amy's instruments picked them up. We've got company, she reported. Multiple contacts, keeping their distance. Are they hostile? Ben asked. I don't think so, Amy said. They're just watching us. Lisa ran a scan. Those are refugee ships, species that fled from the empires. They're hiding in the dead zones between territories. Jake opened a general broadcast. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Human Fleet. We mean you no harm. We're traveling to the Galactic Core on a peaceful mission. At first, there was no response. Then slowly, one of the refugee ships sent a message. The being on the screen was small and furry, with large eyes that held deep sadness. You go to the Forbidden Zone, the creature said in broken standard galactic language. Why, the empires will kill you. We have a debt to repay, Jake said simply. Someone helped us long ago, now they need help. The refugee stared at him for a long moment. You are the humans, the Deathworlders. We heard the empires fear you. They should respect us, Jake corrected. We don't want to fight anyone, but we won't be stopped from doing what's right. More refugee ships appeared over the next few days. They followed the human fleet from a distance, watching in wonder. As these newcomers from Earth refused to bow to the empires, word spread through the hidden networks of refugees and outcasts. The humans were different. The humans cared about honor and duty more than power. When they reached the border of Kreeth territory, they found a fleet waiting for them. 20 warships, each bristling with weapons. The Kreeth were reptilian beings, larger than humans, with scales that shimmered in the starlight. They were the military backbone of the three empires, and they didn't waste time with warnings. Human vessels, you will surrender or be destroyed, came the transmission. You have 10 seconds to comply. Rick Stone's voice came over the fleet channel. Suggestions, Captain Morrison? Jake thought fast. The Kreeth had been monitoring the fleet's progress. They knew about the encounters with the Valkyrian Zun. They knew human ships were tough. So they had brought overwhelming force. We can't fight 20 ships, Ben said quietly. Not even with our advantages. We don't need to fight them all, Jake replied. We just need to get past them. Amy can. You give us a speed boost? I can push the engines to 120%, Amy said. But only for about 10 minutes before they overheat. That might be enough. All ships prepare for emergency acceleration on my mark. Jake opened the channel to the Kreeth fleet. This is Captain Morrison. We have no intention of surrendering. We're coming through with or without your permission. The Kreeth commander's face filled the screen. He was massive, with scarred scales and cold eyes. You are brave but foolish, Deathworlder. Your 3 ships cannot defeat our fleet. Then you'll have to catch us first, Jake said. Mark! The 3 human ships surged forward at impossible speed. The Kreeth fleet fired, filling the space with energy beams and missiles, but Amy had timed it perfectly. The human ships weaved through the attack, their shields absorbing the damage that got through. Shields at 70%, Ben reported. We're taking hits. Keep going, Jake ordered. We're almost through. One of the Kreeth dreadnoughts tried to block their path, positioning itself directly in their route. But Rick Stone, always the hotshot pilot, executed a maneuver that should have been impossible for a ship that size. The New Dawn rolled and dove, passing within meters of the Kreeth vessel. You're insane, Rick! Kate shouted over the channel, but there was admiration in her voice. They broke through the Kreeth line and jumped to faster-than-light speed before the Empire ships could react. Behind them, the Kreeth fleet scrambled to pursue, but the humans had too much of a head start. That was too close, Ben said, letting out a breath he'd been holding. But we made it, Amy replied with a grin. And did you see their faces? They couldn't believe we just flew through them. Lisa was studying her sensors. Captain, the refugee ships are still following us, and there are more of them now. I count at least 50 vessels. They see us as hope, Jake said. We're showing them that the empires can be challenged. Emma. Right, the fleet's chief biologist had been studying the data they'd collected during their encounters. She called Jake to her lab, her face troubled. I've been analyzing our performance compared to the Empire species, she said. Captain, we're not just a little tougher than them. We're vastly superior in almost every physical category. Explain, Jake said. Emma brought up comparison charts. An average human has 3 times the bone density of a Valkyrie. Our muscle mass relative to body weight is twice that of a Zun. We can survive radiation levels that would kill a Kreeth in minutes. We can eat almost anything organic because we evolved as omnivores on a planet where you had to be able to eat whatever you could find. We can heal from injuries they consider fatal. We can think clearly in situations that would send them into shock. Why? Jake asked. Because Earth is hell compared to where they come from, Emma said bluntly. The Valkyrie evolved on a world with gentle weather and no predators. The Zun come from a planet where telepathy developed because life was so peaceful they never needed physical strength. The Kreeth have high gravity, but their world is otherwise paradise. Earth? The galactic core was like nothing Jake had ever seen. Space itself seemed to shimmer and twist with energy. Massive clouds of radiation swirled between stars packed so densely that night would never truly come to any planet here. His instruments screamed, warnings about lethal conditions that would kill any normal ship within hours. The horizon's edge pressed forward anyway. Human ships were built to survive in hell, and the core was just another challenge to overcome. Radiation levels are off the chart, Amy reported from engineering. If we were in a Valkyrie or Zun ship, we'd already be dead. Our shields are holding, but it's taking constant power to maintain them. How long can we last? Jake asked. Days, maybe a week if we're careful, Amy said. The others have built-in tolerances for this kind of environment. We just push through it. Marcus Webb, the fleet's quantum physicist, was studying the sensor data with fascination. This is incredible. The gravitational forces here are creating ripples in space-time. And look at this energy signature. It's not natural. Someone built something massive here. The Sanctum, Lisa said, joining them on the bridge. According to the progenitor data, it's a megastructure. A place where they could exist in a physical form protected from the energy storms of the core. Nina Cole, a Marine sergeant who specialized in reconnaissance, pulled up tactical displays. If we're heading into a structure that big, we need to be ready for anything. The empires know where we're going now. They'll be coming. She was right. Even as the human fleet navigated through the deadly radiation, their long-range sensors picked up massive fleets assembling at the edge of the core, the Valkyrie. Zun and Kreeth had decided to work together for the first time in centuries. They couldn't allow humans to reach the Sanctum first. They're scared, Ben observed. They know if we free the progenitors, their whole power structure might collapse. After 3 days of careful navigation, they found it. The Sanctum appeared on their screens like a jewel hanging in the void. It was a sphere, easily the size of Earth's moon, made of materials that shouldn't exist. It gleamed with its own light, unbothered by the radiation that would destroy lesser structures. By all the stars, Rick breathed over the communication channel. It's beautiful. As they approached, the Sanctum sent out a signal. This time it wasn't words but pure data flowing directly into their ship's computers. Images and information filled every screen on the bridge. Lisa worked frantically to translate it all. Captain, I'm getting the full story now. The progenitors weren't just another species. They were the first intelligent life in this part of the galaxy. They evolved from pure energy beings millions of years ago. They spent their existence helping other species develop, uplifting them from primitive life to civilization. Why? Jake asked. Because they were lonely, Lisa said softly. They wanted children. Other minds to talk to share the universe with. So they found promising species on dozens of worlds and helped them advance. They gave them fire, language, tools, art, everything needed to build civilizations. More images flashed across the screens. Jake saw the Valkyrie in their early days, learning to trade and communicate. He saw the Zun developing their telepathic abilities with guidance from shimmering beings of light. He saw the Kreeth rising from savage warriors to organize societies. And he saw Earth, frozen and dying during an ice age. Small groups of humans huddled in caves, barely surviving. Then the progenitors came. They taught humans to control fire, to speak complex languages, to make sophisticated tools. They stayed for generations, ensuring humanity would survive and thrive. They loved us, Lisa said, tears in her eyes. All of us. Every species they helped. They loved us like parents love their children. What happened to them? Ben asked. The images showed a catastrophe. A cosmic event, some kind of energy wave from deep space that the progenitors couldn't survive in their energy forms. They had to retreat into the sanctum, into a containment system that would protect them. Before they sealed themselves away, they left messages for all their uplifted children. When the containment began to fail, they would send a signal. Their children should come and free them. But none of the others came, Jake said. The Empires forgot, Marcus said, studying the data. Or they chose to forget. The Valkyrie, Zun, and Kreeth all received the same call we did. But they saw it as a threat to their power. If the progenitors returned, they might judge how their children had turned out. And the Empires knew they had become corrupt. Grace Palmer, working at the communications station, suddenly stiffened. Captain, I'm receiving a direct transmission. It's from inside the sanctum. Put it through, Jake ordered. The voice that emerged was weak and faint, like someone speaking from very far away. But it carried warmth and joy that made everyone on the bridge feel it. Children of Terra, the voice said. Our youngest, our most stubborn, our bravest. You came. You remembered. You honored the debt when all others forgot. We're here, Jake said. Tell us what to do. How can we help you? The containment is failing, the progenitor replied. We have been trapped for 50,000 of your years. The system that sustains us in physical form is breaking down. Soon we will dissipate, our consciousness scattered across the cosmos. To free us, someone must enter the core chamber and manually override the system. Marcus studied the schematics that came through. Captain, these conditions are impossible. The core chamber has pressure levels that would crush a normal ship, radiation that would kill anything organic in seconds, temperature extremes that no known species could survive. No known species except one, Emma said quietly. She had joined them on the bridge, her face pale but determined. Humans. Captain, the chamber's conditions are similar to the worst environments on Earth, high pressure like the deep ocean. Radiation like standing unshielded during a solar flare. Temperature swings like the difference between desert day and Arctic night. It's designed specifically for Deathworlders. They knew, Lisa said with sudden understanding. The progenitors knew that one day they might need help from someone who could survive in extreme conditions. That's why they helped humanity. We were their insurance policy. Or they just believed in us, Jake said. Either way, we need a volunteer. Every human on the bridge raised their hand immediately. It was so perfectly human that Jake almost laughed. But this wasn't a decision to make lightly. Whoever went into that chamber might not come back. I'll go, Emma said. I've spent my whole career studying extreme survival. I know human limits better than anyone. I'm the best chance we have. Before Jake could respond, alarms blared across every station. Ben's face went grim as he read the tactical display. They're here. All three Empire fleets just dropped out of faster than light right at the edge of weapons range. Kate's voice came through from the Defiant. Jake, we've got a problem. I count over 200 ships out there. They've brought everything they have? The view screen showed the assembled might of 3 galactic empires. Valkyrie trade ships converted to carriers? Zone telepathic command vessels. Kreeth dreadnoughts bristling with weapons. All of them focused on 3 human ships and the sanctum behind them. A transmission came through. 3 faces appeared on the screen together. The leaders of the 3 empires. Humans, the Valkyrie leader chittered. You have gone far enough. The sanctum and its technology belong to us. Withdraw now or be destroyed. The progenitors are our heritage, the Zon commander added, his telepathic voice cold in their minds. Not yours. You are primitives who do not understand the forces you meddle with, the Kreeth general growled. Leave or die. Jake looked at the massive fleet arrayed against them. 3 ships against 200. By any reasonable calculation, they should surrender. But humans had never been very good at being reasonable when their sense of honor was involved. This is Captain Jake Morrison, he said calmly. The beings inside that structure saved my species from extinction. They asked for our help, and we gave our word we would come. I don't care how many ships you have. We're not leaving. Then you are fools, the Valkyrie leader said. You will die for nothing. Maybe, Jake admitted. But before we do, I'm going to broadcast something to everyone in the galaxy. He nodded to Grace, who began transmitting on all frequencies. Every ship, every station, every inhabited world in range would receive the message. This is the truth about your empires, Jake said. The progenitors uplifted all of your species. They gave you everything you are. When they called for help, you ignored them. You abandoned the ones who created your civilizations. Why? Because you were afraid they would judge you, that they would see how corrupt and power-hungry you've become. Humanity is only 200 years into space travel, but we know one thing that you forgot. Honor matters. Keeping your word matters. If we die here today, at least we'll die knowing we did the right thing. The transmission cut off. For a moment, there was silence. Then the Empire fleets opened fire. The space around the sanctum erupted into chaos. Energy beams and missiles streaked toward the 3 human ships. Amy pushed the shields to maximum, and Dan Foster's Marines prepared for boarding actions. Alex Morgan, the fleet's best pilot, launched in a small fighter craft to draw fire away from the main ships. All ships, defensive formation around the sanctum, Kate ordered. We. Emma's fingers moved across the ancient control panel, each motion taking all her concentration. The radiation was cooking her even through the shielding. She could feel her skin burning, her cells breaking down. But she kept working. This was what humans did. They endured. The override sequence required 17 different inputs, each one more complex than the last. Marcus had downloaded the instructions into her suit's computer, but executing them in these conditions was another matter entirely. Her vision blurred. Her hands shook. Blood ran from her nose inside the helmet. Dr. Wright, your vital signs are critical, came Nina's voice through the radio. You need to abort. Almost done, Emma gasped. Just a few more. Outside the sanctum, the battle had become a desperate struggle for survival. The horizon's edge took hit after hit, its shields finally failing. Hull breaches appeared across multiple decks. Fire suppression systems worked overtime to keep the ship from breaking apart. Shields down, Ben reported, his voice tight. We're taking direct hits to the hull. Keep us between them and the sanctum, Jake ordered. Blood ran down his face from a gash on his forehead where he'd been thrown against his console. We hold this line. Sarah Mitchell, commanding the Marine contingent aboard the ship, sealed off damaged sections and rerouted power to critical systems. Her troops moved through the corridors in their combat armor, ready to repel boarders if the Empire forces tried to take the ship by force. Captain, 3 Kreeth boarding pods are on approach, she reported. Done. Take your team and stop them, Jake said. Don Foster and his Marines moved to the breach points. When the Kreeth came through, confident in their superior size and strength, they met humans on their home ground. The Kreeth warriors were larger, with thick scales and powerful claws, but they had evolved on a high-gravity world with limited predators. Their fighting style was straightforward, relying on size advantage. The humans were different. They fought like pack hunters from a death world, coordinating their attacks, using every weapon and tactic available. The first Kreeth through the breach took 3 rounds to the chest from Dan's rifle. The second found itself grabbed by 2 Marines who used the ship's higher gravity against it, throwing the warrior off balance. "They're not used to fighting something that fights back this hard," one of the Marines said. Reloading. "They've never met humans before," Don replied. "Let's make this a lesson they don't forget." The boarding action turned into a slaughter. The Kreeth, for all their reputation as warriors, had grown soft fighting species that would surrender when outnumbered. Humans didn't surrender. Humans adapted, improvised, and overcame. Within minutes, the boarding teams were fleeing back to their pods, and those that didn't move fast enough were left behind. Meanwhile, Kyle Brennan worked miracles in engineering. With the shields down and power fluctuating, he rerouted systems on the fly, keeping the ship's weapons online and life support functioning. When a coolant line ruptured, he sealed it with his bare hands, ignoring the burns. "Engineering to bridge," he called out. "I can give you 1 more weapons burst, but after that, the whole power grid is going to crash." "Make it count?" "Understood," Jake said. He looked at his tactical display, calculating angles and firing solutions. The Defiant and New Dawn were in similar condition, battered but still fighting. The refugee ships had taken terrible losses, but they held their position. And somewhere inside the sanctum, Emma was either succeeding or dying. He had to buy her more time. "All ships, concentrate fire on the lead Kreeth dreadnought," he ordered. "Everything we have left, now." 3 damaged human vessels and a dozen refugee ships opened fire together. The combined assault was like a hammer blow. The Kreeth dreadnought's shields shattered, and its hull split open in a brilliant explosion. The massive ship, the flagship of the Kreeth fleet, died in seconds, but it cost them everything. The horizon's edge went dark as its power grid overloaded. Emergency lights flickered on, casting red shadows across the bridge. The Defiant and New Dawn weren't much better off. "We're dead in space," Amy reported. "No engines, no shields, weapons offline. We're done?" The Empire fleets moved in for the kill. 200 ships closing on 3 helpless human vessels. Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. They met his eyes without fear. They had done their duty. They had kept their word. "It's been an honor serving with all of you," he said quietly. Inside the Sanctum core chamber, Emma entered the final command. Her body was shutting down. She could feel organs failing, systems crashing, but her hand was steady as she pressed the last. Control. The chamber exploded with light. The progenitors emerged not as physical beings, but as pure energy. Their consciousness freed from the failing containment system. They expanded outward, passing through the walls of the sanctum like water through a net. In an instant, they filled the space around the structure with their presence. Every ship, every being in the battle suddenly felt it. A presence in their minds, but not like the Gen's invasive telepathy. This was gentle, warm, like a parent's embrace. The progenitors spoke, and every conscious mind in the system heard them. "Our children," they said, their voices carrying infinite sadness and love. "What have you become?" The Empire fleets froze. Their weapons powered down without anyone touching the controls. Ships drifted to a stop as the progenitors examined what their uplifted species had created. "We gave you fire to warm yourselves, and you made weapons," the progenitors continued. "We gave you language to communicate, and you made lies. We gave you tools to build, and you made empires to oppress. We called for your help, and you chose to forget us." The Valkyrie leader tried to speak, but the words died in his throat. The Zoan commander's telepathic abilities meant nothing against beings of pure thought. The Kreeth general, so proud of his military might, could only watch helplessly. "But one species answered," the progenitor said. "Our youngest children, the ones from the death world who we feared might not survive. They came. They risked everything to honor a debt from 50,000 years ago. They showed us that not all was lost. That honor and duty still exist in this galaxy. The progenitors turned their attention to the human ships, and Jake felt their regard like warm sunlight after a long winter. Inside the core chamber, Emma collapsed, her body finally giving out. But the progenitors were there. Their energy wrapping around her, sustaining her, healing her. You sacrificed yourself for beings you had never met, they told Emma. You endured conditions that would kill anyone else. You are truly the child of Earth, the death world we feared and loved in equal measure. Emma opened her eyes to find herself floating in light. Her burns were healed. Her radiation sickness was gone. She felt stronger than she had in her entire life. Thank you, she whispered. No, the progenitors replied. Thank you. They returned her to her companions, where Nina caught her in a tight embrace. Then the progenitors turned their attention to the gathered fleets. We will bear witness, they declared. All of you will hear the truth of what has happened here. Images flooded every mind in the system. The Empire's crimes were laid bare. The Valkyrie's exploitation of lesser species for profit. The Gen's telepathic manipulation of entire populations. The Kreeth's brutal suppression of any who opposed them. Species enslaved, worlds stripped of resources, civilizations destroyed for the Empire's benefit, and then they showed what humanity had done. How they had traveled across the galaxy to honor an ancient debt. How they had faced impossible odds without hesitation. How they had protected refugee ships even when it meant their own destruction. How they had kept their word when everyone else had forgotten what that meant. You asked for our technology, the progenitors told the Empire leaders. You thought to take it by force? But we give nothing to those who have proven unworthy. The Valkyrie, Zun, and Kreeth empires are judged and found wanting. The effect was immediate and devastating. Throughout the galaxy, every ship, every station, every piece of advanced technology that had been built using progenitor knowledge began to shut down. Not destroyed, but locked, rendered inoperable. The Empire's fleets went dark. Their weapons stopped working. Their communications died. In seconds, the three great powers of the galaxy were reduced to primitive technology. They could still fly ships and communicate, but their advantages were gone. They were no longer superior to the species they had oppressed. The Valkyrie leader screamed in rage. The Zuan commander tried desperately to use telepathy to reverse the judgment. The Kreeth general roared threats, but the progenitors were unmoved. You will learn again what it means to earn your place in the galaxy, the progenitors said. You will learn humility. And perhaps one day you will learn honor. Then they turned to the humans and their tone changed. It became warm again, proud even. Children of Terra, they said. You who survived the death world. You who kept your word. You who showed mercy even to those who sought to kill you. We offer you a gift. Light surrounded the three human ships, and power flowed back into them. But it was more than just repairs. The progenitor's energy infused the vessels with new capabilities, new understanding. They gave humanity access to medical technology that could heal any injury, cure any disease. You honored life by risking your own, the progenitors explained. The silence that followed the progenitor's departure was profound. Every ship in the system sat quiet, their crews trying to process what had just happened. The galaxy had changed in an instant, and no one was quite sure what came next. Jake broke the silence first. All hands damage report. Medical teams to all injured personnel. Engineering, assess our status. The human ships came back to life with activity. Amy ran diagnostics and reported that not only were they repaired, but their systems were enhanced in ways she didn't fully understand yet. Helen Cross, the chief medical officer, found that Emma was fully healed despite the lethal radiation exposure she had endured. In fact, Emma was healthier than before she entered the chamber. The progenitor's gift, Emma said quietly, looking at her hands in wonder. They gave us advanced medical technology. Captain, with this knowledge, we could cure diseases that have plagued humanity for centuries. Then we'll share it, Jake said. With everyone who needs it? Outside the horizon's edge, the situation was tense. The Empire fleets were disabled but not destroyed. Their basic systems still functioned, but all their advanced technology was locked. The refugee ships clustered together, uncertain what would happen next. And then something unexpected occurred. Ships within the Empire fleets began to break formation. Not to attack, but to leave. Species that had been forced to serve the empires for generations suddenly saw their chance for freedom. The progenitor's judgment had revealed every crime, every abuse of power. The empire's subject species wanted no part of that anymore. The Valkyrie trade fleet fragmented first. Dozens of ships from different species simply turned around and headed home. The Zun formations dissolved as non-telepathic species refused to follow orders anymore. The Kreeth military, built on intimidation, found that fear no longer worked when everyone knew their technology was gone. Within hours, the great fleets were reduced to a fraction of their size. Only the core species remained, and even they were in chaos. The Valkyrie, Zun, and Kreeth faced rebellion on their homeworlds as their people learned the truth. "Captain Morrison," came a transmission. It was one of the Valkyrie commanders, his voice much humbler than before. "What happens now?" Jake thought carefully before responding. "That's up to you. The progenitors judged you, but they didn't destroy you. You have a choice. You can try to rebuild your empires, or you can build something better. And if we choose wrong?" the Valkyrie asked. "Then you'll face the consequences from your own people," Jake said. "Not from us. We're not here to rule anyone. We're just here to make sure everyone gets a fair chance to choose their own path." Over the following days, a strange new order began to emerge. The refugee ships formed a coalition, electing representatives to speak for them. They asked Jake and the human fleet to stay and help establish peace while they figured out what to do next. Kate Sullivan took charge of the diplomatic efforts. She had been a military officer, but she understood that what the galaxy needed now wasn't more soldiers, but someone who could help people talk to each other. "We need a gathering place," she said during a meeting aboard the Horizon's edge. "Somewhere neutral where all species can meet as equals." "The Sanctum?" Lisa suggested. "It's empty now, but the structure is sound. It could be converted into a station where representatives from every species could gather." The idea spread quickly. Within weeks, engineers from dozens of species arrived at the Sanctum, working together to transform the ancient structure into something new. The humans provided the medical technology the progenitors had gifted them, healing injured workers and curing diseases. In return, other species shared their own knowledge and skills. Dan Foster found himself training security forces from multiple species. At first, they were wary of the human marine, having heard stories about Deathworlders and their combat abilities. But Dan proved to be a patient teacher, showing them that strength wasn't just about fighting, but about knowing when not to fight. "Where I come from, the best warrior is the one who wins without violence," he told a class of mixed species recruits. "Use your strength to protect, not to dominate." Rick Stone worked with refugee pilots, teaching them maneuvers that only humans had dared to try before. To his surprise, he found that when other species stopped being afraid and started believing in themselves, they could be just as brave as any human. "You're all a lot tougher than you think," he told them with a grin. "You just needed someone to show you it was possible." Emma continued her research, but now with access to biological data from hundreds of species. She made breakthrough after breakthrough, finding ways to treat conditions that had been considered incurable. The medical station she established on the Sanctum became famous across the galaxy as a place where anyone could find healing, regardless of their species or ability to pay. "This is what the progenitors wanted," she said to Jake one day. "Not for one species to be superior, but for all of us to lift each other up." Marcus Webb worked with scientists from other species to understand the progenitor technology. What they learned was humbling. The advanced systems the empires had used were just the surface level. The real depth of progenitor knowledge would take generations to fully comprehend. "They gave the empires tools but not wisdom," Marcus explained. "They hoped their children would learn both." The empires learned how to use power but forgot why they had been given it. Grace Palmer established the first truly galactic communication network, one that no single species controlled. Every world, every station, every ship could connect and share information freely. The truth could no longer be hidden or controlled by those in power. The impact was revolutionary. Species that had been enemies for generations discovered they had more in common than they thought. Trade networks formed based on cooperation rather than exploitation. Conflicts were resolved through negotiation instead of force, but not everything was peaceful. The core worlds of the three empires refused to give up their power easily. The Valkyrie Council tried to maintain control through economic manipulation. The Zun leadership used what telepathic abilities they still had to influence those around them. The Kreeth military staged several attempted coups to restore their dominance. Each time, it was their own people who stopped them. The citizens of the Empire homeworlds had seen the truth. They knew what their leaders had done, and they wanted no part of it anymore. The empires aren't falling because we're attacking them, Ben observed to Jake. They're falling because their own people are choosing something different. Jake watched from the observation deck of the horizon's edge as the galaxy transformed around them. It wasn't quick or easy. There were setbacks and conflicts. But slowly, steadily, something new was being built. 6 months after the battle at the Sanctum, the first meeting of what would become the Free Galactic Assembly took place. Representatives from over 300 species gathered in the converted Sanctum, sitting as equals. The Valkyrie Zun and Kreeth were there too, but as participants, not rulers. Kate Sullivan gave the opening address. Standing at a podium in the center of the Great Hall, we gather here today not as empires and subjects, not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals, she began. The progenitors gave us all gifts. They lifted us from primitive life and showed us the stars. We forgot that gift and built systems of oppression and greed. But today we remember. Today we choose something better. The Assembly established basic principles that all members would agree to follow. No species would be enslaved. No world would be exploited. Disputes would be resolved through dialogue, not force. Technology would be shared for the benefit of all, not hoarded for the advantage of a few. It wasn't perfect. There were species that refused to join. There were conflicts that couldn't be easily resolved. But it was a start. The humans were offered positions of leadership in the new assembly. After all, they had been the ones to free the progenitors, to stand up to the empires, to sacrifice everything for honor. Jake turned down the offer on behalf of humanity. We'll participate as equals, he said. But we're not interested in ruling. Every species here has something to contribute. Our job is to help make sure everyone gets heard, not to tell everyone what to do. Some species didn't understand the decision. Why would the humans, who had proven themselves stronger than the empires, not seize power when it was offered? But the refugee species understood. They had seen humans fight not for conquest but for principle. They had watched humans sacrifice themselves to protect strangers. They knew that true strength was choosing not to dominate when you could. As the assembly continued its work, the 3 human ships prepared to return home. They had been gone for over a year, and Earth was waiting for their report. The night before their departure, Jake gathered his senior staff one last time in the Horizon's Edge's wardroom. They had all been changed by the journey. Some carried scars that would never fully heal. All carried memories they would never forget. We did something impossible, Amy said, raising a glass. 3 ships against 3 empires, and we won. We didn't win, Jake corrected gently. We kept our word. There's a difference, is there? Don asked with a slight smile. Looks like winning to me. The real winners are all the species out there who get a chance at freedom now.